Hi, this is Barbara from Midsummer Farm, a diverse and small organic farm in Warwick, New York. I wanted to talk a little bit about Japanese beetle control. This year has been a bad year for Japanese beetles. I guess good for the beetles, but bad for my garden. And there's actually a couple different approaches that you could take to Japanese beetle control. The first one, which I think is the most effective, is simply gathering them by hand. I use a Tupperware container of some sort and just knock them off the plants into the container. I do this in the morning when it is coolish and they tend to be drowsy and easy to catch at that point. And you can either just throw away the container or feed them to your chickens, whatever works for you. Here's some vegetable mallow, heavily infested with them. Even using trap plants to lure them away from your vegetable crops. There's still some vegetable crops that Japanese beetles seem to really love the most. So with these, I'm just simply going to use a little plastic container with a top. I'm out here in the early morning when they're still kind of drowsy from the evening. They're very slow in the morning. It's the cool weather, it's half asleep. I'm just gonna bonk them in here. You just shake them in. Lovely. Bunch of poops got in there too. Just really attractive. You just seal it up. You could just throw this away. I feel a little bad just letting them suffocate. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to feed them to my chickens. I mean, chickens love Japanese beetles, which is nice. Quite a few garden pests that chickens actually don't like, so it's nice when they actually do like one. Gobble them up really fast. But there's a couple other ways of going about it. In a small garden, nothing beats the hand collecting and trapping of Japanese beetles. Another thing that people do use, I've tried this quite a few years in a row, you get desperate when you have a bad Japanese beetle year, are these pheromone traps. It's basically a plastic bag that you hang from a tree. You put the pheromone in the plastic bag and the beetles fly to it and fall into the bag and get trapped. This contention, this may attract more beetles into your garden than you would have had already. So, I don't know. If you do use it, I would put it probably about 200 feet from your actual vegetable garden, from the spots that you don't want the beetles on. One year I found it very effective to actually hang this about 200 feet from the raspberry patch, which was really getting destroyed by the beetles. And then I went in and I used a broom and knocked the beetles off the raspberries. Once they took flight, they noticed the trap and seemed to go to it better. So maybe, and then took it down. I didn't just leave it out there constantly for weeks and just, which I think just keeps attracting more and more beetles to your yard. So, can be used, you just have to do a little bit of smart use. You gotta use it smartly. But it definitely attracts them. It's amazing, they can fly right to it, so the pheromone works. What I also like to do in my own garden is I use trap plants. So these are weeds. I didn't have to worry about, seeding these or finding these. These are just total weeds. This is pig amaranth. Kind of an annoying weed because they're hard to pull once they get like this big. They tend to be really hard to actually pull out of the ground, but they are edible. They're okay to eat. They're kind of a spinachy flavor, a little tough once it gets hot out though. Especially once they start getting little tops on them. But it does keep the beetles off of things. The one I like the most, and that, when I see pig amaranth, I pull in the garden because it is annoying. I like smartweed. Easy to pull, volunteers prolifically. It gets these little pink flowers, which I'll have a photo posted of a close-up of it. There's a bunch of different versions of this plant. It's the Polygonum family. So you've probably seen sometimes they're big ones, sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long and lanky. It's just, we have at least 3 different varieties here at Midsummer Farm. The Japanese beetles do love it though, so it really works as a great way of luring the Japanese beetles off of things like eggplants and kale and things that they like into some that they really love. And it's an easy way of sort of gathering them all up in one spot, and then you can either trap them or kill them at that point. Here's an example of how the trap or lure plant is actually being very effective. Japanese beetles eat Swiss chard. There's a little bit of damage on these Swiss chard leaves from the Japanese beetles, but if you look in between them, you've got the lady thumb or smartweed, and the damage is just highly extensive to that poor plant. They're actually eating it right now, and you could just see it's keeping them off the Swiss chard. The thing to remember is that all bugs have a very specific and delineated time period that they are actually out and active, and it's a short time period. So if they spend all their time, all their short lifespans, eating the smartweed and not eating the chard, that's fine with me. One of the big things I like to tell people about Japanese beetles is that you have to just take a deep breath and be patient about them. They will go away. You hope that they don't cause extreme damage, so you watch for that extreme damage, but you're only going to be picking them off of those plants for about 2 or 3 weeks. That they have a very kind of short window, duration of their adult life of actually doing the damage that you see. So keeping them under control by hand picking really makes sense. There are other things you could use. Diatomaceous earth is often recommended for Japanese beetle control. I don't think it could work on such a big and heavily armored beetle. I mean, Japanese beetles are tough. So diatomaceous earth works by actually slicing through the bug. It's extremely sharp, and it works for soft-bodied insects, but not necessarily great for Japanese beetles. Another thing along those same lines is kale and clay. Basically what you're doing is you're coating the plant in the clay. The clay is offensive to the bug doesn't eat the plant. Both these things, the kale and clay and the diatomaceous earth, the rain is going to wash them off. It's going to be, you're going to have to constantly go back out there and re-put it on. Maybe it's better if you just go out there with a container and gather the beetles and kill them. It also costs nothing just to gather them by hand in a container. The other way that people usually control Japanese beetles is with milky spore. It's a disease, it's a bacteria that you put into your ground, and within several years it ends up culling the population of Japanese beetles. It's very effective in some places with some situations, and other times I don't even know if it is actually working or if the Japanese beetles are just going through a natural, they go through natural phases of, good years and bad years. Last year we had hardly any Japanese beetles. This year we have lots. I didn't put down milky spore a couple years before. So, and it tends to be when you have a really bad year, the next year's better. So that's promising. But yeah, if we went and put milky spore down now, and then next year we don't have too many Japanese beetles, we'd say, well, that worked, but it probably wouldn't have been a big Japanese beetle year anyway next year. So just something to think about. Certainly bringing in some kind of bacterial grub control is a good thing, because that's what the milky spore does, actually attacks the Japanese beetle grubs. It's a disease of the grubs in the ground and lawns. So worth a try. I mean, why not? It's completely organic and safe to use with animals and pets and things like that. But I used it a couple times and then just decided that it wasn't necessary. So that's my advice. Just pick them up by hand using a container and get rid of them that way. And deep breaths, be patient, they will go away. There's some very typical damage done by Japanese beetles to some soybeans that lacing of the leaves just screams Japanese beetle.